Hell yeah, we're down with OTC. Yeah, who's down with OTC? Welcome to On the Chain. This is Chip and my
Yep.
co-host Jeff. What's going on, Jeff?
What is going on?
I don't know. Oh, that's what I'm
Man,
asking
we
you.
man, we had a great stream yesterday.
That was
That was
awesome.
outstanding. Yeah, and every day is a new day. A lot of great things going on tonight. We are going to dig in and talk a little bit about cryptocurrency. How about that?
And a little bit of XRP and a couple updates here and there and a couple little surprises. What are the surprises? Well, we can't tell you. They wouldn't be surprises. But just welcome everybody. Jeff, let's get this kicked off, can we?
All right, let's just kick it off right now.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Boom. Right there.
Hang on.
Okay, try it again.
Yeah, one time.
Ready?
And now, the roundtable with Jeff and Chip on the chain.
All right, now you got to do that one again. Let's go.
All right. Okay, just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. There was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, first of all, it was great having John Deaton on last night. I mean, the guy's such a rock star. I call him a superhero because, you know, when people are like, what do we do? What do we do? And somebody comes in out of nowhere defending the honor and the integrity of the community. And it's not just the XRP community, it's the entire community of cryptocurrencies, all the altcoins, except for the other two that were deemed not securities. We won't talk about them now, Jeff, but I mean, the guy's amazing.
That's it. That's it. Man, look at that. See, DDD, he likes my hair better than yours. That's because blockchain something over here, blockchain buddies, is loving the hair.
He's loving the what?
The hair.
Which hair? You don't have, which hair are we talking
Your
about?
Your
Jeff?
hair. He's talking about you.
Oh yeah, well my hair is growing.
Loving the hair, Chip.
I'm letting it grow, man. I'm letting it grow. I'm just gonna let it grow up. Live my days of youth when it got. I'm not gonna let it go that long. I'm away from.
And it looks like Professor XRP was first in.
Professor XRP.
He wasn't really first in, but it looks like he was down here at the bottom.
Yeah, that's.
But no, we actually had Jacob Doyle was the first one in today.
Post holla.
So what is going on, Jacob? And then we got Stiggy that came in as well. But it'd be great, man. You know, as usual, we got people coming in here from all over the world. So it'd be awesome to see where people are coming in from. If you guys want to give a shout out to where you guys are at, that'd be awesome. And that's the show, Chip.
That's it. We got to go. Thanks, guys. No, that's the show. That's not the show, Jeff. We got so much to talk about here. And one of the first things that I want to talk about, I want to throw this on there. It's a real short one, but let's get into it. So it wasn't even like 3 seconds in to Gary Gensler was like going to be nominated to be the chairman of the SEC. Brad Garlinghouse is like, congrats to Gary Gensler. We're ready to work with the SEC leadership and the broader Biden administration to chart a path forward for blockchain and crypto innovation in the U.S. And you know what? Look, these are one of those obligatory tweets you have to put out.
Treats.
Yeah, it's a treat sometimes too. It's a treat for, well, I don't think Gary Gensler's, he's like, who is this Ripple and what are they doing? Of course, he knows all about Ripple. Yeah, okay, maybe 3 years ago he called it a security or he called it was it a commodity or security? But later he came out and said, oh, no, it's a cryptocurrency. But at least he has an understanding of the ecosystem, Jeff, right?
That's really cool. Yep. And that's awesome. I'm glad that he's reaching out. But check it out, man. We got people coming in here from Indiana tonight, Philippines,
I never guessed Indiana.
Island. We've got Leon here is coming from the Sultanate of Oman.
Texas.
Yeah. Australia, Vegas. Got Mario in from Vegas, Artin from California. Man, you know, I was funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday, and he just got back from California, and he said that I said, "What'd you do when you're out in California? It's supposed to be shut down." He said, "I don't know. We went out and ate it out at restaurants." So I don't know.
The Netherlands. We know it's late there, and we appreciate you coming in. Los Angeles, California. That's how Lebanese always say it. Los Angeles, and we have look at this, Glendale. I've been in Glendale.
Yep, I've been there.
We have Israel in the house. Hello.
Really nice, Tomer. Nice.
Arizona in the house. Look at this. Puerto Rico. August, Puerto Rico, Copenhagen, dude.
Puerto Rico, Copenhagen, nice.
Alberta. A lot of Canadians coming in lately too. Loving our Canadian off. By the way, I grew up right on the border of Niagara Falls, Ontario. You know, right there on the American side, and it was like I felt like I was Canadian. Well, all of my relatives were Canadian, except for my father was my grandfather was the only one that came down from Canada. The rest of them stayed there. So all my relatives are spread out all over Canada.
Yeah,
so there you go. There's my ties in Canada, Jeff.
So we've got Tuga in the house.
Tuga.
There we got Tampa, Ohio. See, that's why I said this is the show. We can just keep reading off where people are from, and then we're like, an hour go by, and then there'll be no XRP.
No, it's really cool. I really appreciate everybody coming in here because, you know, it's good for us to know where you're coming in from. It helps us to target our audience so we talk only about U.S. stuff. No, I'm kidding. We do talk about how it affects the global. I don't really. I'm. What's up? What's up, Damien? I have to look at this screen because I got 2 screens and not 3 anyway. But I'm always looking around here. And what else do we have here?
Yeah, we got Don coming in from Wexford, Ireland. It's 1 a.m. over there, and he hasn't even missed a segment yet. That's awesome. So he's been with us live streaming. That's awesome.
And great. Jeff, we have an affinity for Ireland, don't we? We both have talked about this before. Man,
love it. And we got Darcy from Galway.
Another one from. Oh man, Darcy, come on. She's like boom. You know what I mean? Right there.
Yeah, right there. All right, so what's going on? What was going on with Brad Garlinghouse, man? Is he already like reaching out to the new SEC chair?
Yeah, he was. Well, he was
whatever.
Yeah, I mean Gensler. So I mean, look, I think that potentially it's good. You know, we never know how something is going to be treated until it actually happens. You don't even know. You know, you have to wait. But I think what we talked about with John Deaton yesterday, who is the attorney who filed the complaint against the SEC on behalf of all of us XRP bag holders. And really, any altcoin holder, if you hold any altcoin, he's right there. I think one of the things we learned is that, you know, coming up, this, you know, I'm trying to think of what to say, how to phrase this, Jeff. I don't even know if I should go there because it sounded like it wasn't going to be a good thing, but so I'm probably not going to go there. But yeah, I'm not gonna venture in that thing. I want to keep it very good. But I just want to say that nobody really knows. And I do feel like there could be potential settlement, but it's in everyone's best interest. I mean, especially, you know, some of the things that Deaton was tweeting about, you know, billions of dollars being eroded from investors, you know, and that's really the primary mission of the SEC. So that's one of the things that kind of I think is a little bit on the disturbing side, I would say, to a degree.
Yeah, that's because they're not really focused on the retail investor. You know, they don't. I mean, if you think about it, anytime you go after, now in this case, typically, if they go after an entity and say, well, there's you're selling an unregistered security, typically you have a smaller grouping of people that are invested at that point. Now, you know, it's a global, it's global in nature. So how does the SEC, you know, I'm still, you know, I'll keep bringing that up. I still don't, you know, get how the SEC is going to rule on something as a security when it's being used all over the world, being bought, being sold, being exchanged. And now if you put it on, you know, if you have a credit card connected to your Uphold, you can spend whatever digital asset you want. You can even spend your gold in there if you wanted to. But it changes the whole dynamics of what's going on.
Oh, it absolutely changed the dynamic. But that was something that, you know, we're getting lesser and lesser in the U.S. here. But I mean, everybody wants to know because let's face it, once, you know, the way this decision could affect everybody. It doesn't matter what country you're in, but, you know, we all want the same thing. We want our investment to do well. We got into, you know, cryptocurrencies like XRP, like XLM, things with strong use cases. We look at the use case, we look at the opportunity, and we did some research and we invested, right? But you'd like to see your investment pay off. And the way it's going to best pay off is if we see some price movement. And I'm not talking about 29, 30, 31. I'm talking about $2.90 and then, you know, $29. That's the kind of movement we're looking at. But that's where we are right now. And who knows? I mean, John Deaton said it could take, you know, if this is not resolved in 6 months, then it could go to potentially a jury trial. But I really feel like after we looked at the Howey test, Jeff, it doesn't seem likely that it's going to hit every prong of it. And I think that maybe, look, no matter who you are, government regulator, whatever, once in a while you step in it, right? You're walking along, you step in, what was that? You look on the bottom of your shoe and there's something not pleasant on the bottom of it. You're like, how did that happen? Sometimes you make miscues. You think something's going to work out and you don't. And it's the fastest way, I still think, to get the regulation, because otherwise they're going to go into committee and they're going to go back and forth and they're going to and we still don't have any regulation. So
yeah, well, here's what's interesting. I mean, there's so many different voices and opinions on what's happening right now. And, we talked a little bit yesterday. I brought it up. Christine Lagarde has come out with, her, view on Bitcoin being, very speculative in nature, used for nefarious purposes. Now, Steve Forbes has come out and he said that Bitcoin's fixed supply limits its ability to meet the needs of a growing economy. And so there's just like, it's amazing how you get all these different, experts, let's call them, in the financial space, and their approach is just, do they not understand? Maybe they do understand. It says here, people are piling in because of a lack of faith in government fiat currencies. The Federal Reserve and other central banks have crushed interest rates and are printing unimaginable amounts of money to pay for COVID relief measures and to stimulate damaged economies. So is that why, based on, this article and based on what Steve Forbes is thinking, that that this is the impetus that's moving people into Bitcoin? And then at the same time, you have the former Canadian Prime Minister comes out and he lists Bitcoin as a possible future reserve currency.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like when you're on top, it doesn't matter what it could be. I mean, right now we're talking about digital assets, right? And Bitcoin is king, right? And it's like all of a sudden the long knives come out for it everywhere. Because Lagarde, who's been pretty positive in general about digital assets, it's like we kind of get that she's not a big fan of Bitcoin, but it's almost everybody. It's like all of a sudden everybody's coming on. I saw an article the other day about the company, Jeff, the gentleman's name that invested that went in at 10,000 and then doubled down at 12,000. MicroStrategies. That's
Michael Saylor.
Michael Saylor. So I saw a whole article around it. I wanted to bookmark it because I see so much stuff. And it said, here is the guy behind, the pump of Bitcoin, and he's a fraudster and all this other stuff. And I'm like, man, I mean, he just made his shareholders a ton of money. I mean, he just made a lot of money for the company, and they're calling him a fraud. He's the guy pumping it. This is it was like a pretty main. I have to look for the article again, but I was shocked because instead of looking and saying, wow, here's a guy who took a pretty solid risk that paid off handsomely, and now they're going after him like, yeah, the company's a shell. It wasn't going to work. It's kind of weird out there to see all this stuff. So, in a weird way, just be happy that XRP slid it on the 5th place. You know what I mean? It's like at 5th place. It's, because we had Polkadot, coming in strong. And I remember looking at Polkadot. I think it's a decent project. I mean, I've liked it, but, that was a couple weeks ago. It was $9. Now it's up to $14, $15. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah. Oh, wait, my dog somehow got in here, and he's like, he'll not leave my side here. He's all over. Right, Max? So, Henny Huska. Hey, I want to go through some of these questions, Jeff. There's some good stuff here that I wanted to pop in here.
Let's do it.
Here we go. Right here's one here. So Forrest Gump, and I can't let you know, Jeff, if that's the real Forrest Gump. It says they want the world's people to be equal, and Americans are generally richer per citizen than other countries. They want to strip Americans of their wealth. That's one potential, possibility. Oscar Nash says, hey, people, my time frame is now through February 22nd. Sometime between there, we are going to pay out big time, I'm hoping. Well, I like the way you think, Oscar. It's always, anything can happen, right? Who really knows? I mean, nobody has that crystal ball. I would like to see that happen. I'd like to see some kind of a settlement. I'd like to see somebody new come in and, have a difference of opinion and say, what are we fighting this lawsuit for? There could be a potential for a settlement. Hamden says in 10 years, a movie will be made about the epic squeeze story, the biggest squeeze in U.S. history. We watch it and saying we were part of that history, Jeff.
It's amazing. I mean, Shahab brings up, a really great point, in terms of what we're witnessing. across the board, from a political perspective, from an economic perspective, it's all intermingling. And we're seeing the politics get intermingled with the cryptocurrency right now, because cryptocurrency is reaching a point of no return, and the politicians realize it, the governments around the world realize it, and now they're trying to figure out what to do. Now they're trying to figure out, can we put up a fight? Can we not put up a fight? Do we try to postpone? What they're trying to figure things out now. And it's almost like some governments get it. Japan gets it. Japan's always a little bit further ahead than the rest of the world, technically speaking, and they're getting it with the digital space. The U.S. is a little bit further behind. We get even in, where's the sand dollar? Is that in Bermuda or the Bahamas?
Bermuda, yeah.
Bermuda, so they get it. The Marshall Islands, they get it. They're all going in that direction.
Yeah. So Darcy puts up a question wanting to know, like, what's the average salary, for an American, in USD? Is it 100,000? Is it more like 50,000? Like, what's an average?
Like 40,
actually, if I look, yeah, I think it's actually less than that, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's somewhere around that neighborhood. I'm seeing conflicting numbers, but it's more like in the $30,000 to $35,000 range, somewhere in that area. It depends. It does differ from year to year. So, and it also depends who's in that group, but it's closer to, it's probably under 50,000. So there you go for most, I would say. There you go. So here's somebody from Kent. This is Kim Thorley Ransom wants to know, what are your views about the price increase of Nick Inc. after the SEC case to the current Ripple case?
What?
It's like you went into a complete. It's like I was like, Jeff, I'm asking the question, like, what do you?
I don't know. I'm not. What is Nick Inc.?
Nick Inc. Online solutions from federal, state, local. I don't know what Nick Inc. is. Are they talking about which case are you talking about there, Kim? I don't know what Nick Inc. is either. I mean, Nick Inc. looks like it's a regulatory body of some kind.
I have to look it up.
NIC provides cost-efficient building the government of tomorrow. I don't know what that is, to be honest with you. Nick, is
I'll
Nick
look into that one.
Wait a second. I'll
Nick
look into
Inc.
that one.
At Nick, we are a public company whose sole purpose is to make government interactions more accessible for everyone through technology.
Yeah, that can't be what she's talking about. That doesn't make any sense. But
that's maybe not. That just says Nick. We'll have to look it up. Give us some more details, and we'll dig into that.
So look at this one. So El Chapo says, hey, any thoughts about why world leaders are resigning? Germany, Holland, Kuwait, Lithuania, Jordan. Also, Putin's been saying he's dealing with health problems all of a sudden. Well, listen, Jeff and I like to talk about socioeconomical, political issues, but this isn't really the show for it. But I mean, I think I have a couple clues of why that's happening. It's interesting. Is it a coincidence? Jeff, you think it's a coincidence?
No, I think there's definitely a lot of there's pieces are always moving around the board. We talked about in the financial space, you have the old guard and the new guard in the crypto space, the fintech space, and they're vying for position right now. The old guard's not going to go away tomorrow. The new guard's not going to take over tomorrow, but there's going to be a blending between them. That's when we talk about the blending of the crypto exchanges and the banks. We're already seeing that move. We're seeing the fintechs. We're seeing everything kind of blend together. We're seeing JP Morgan buying into fintech. They're all moving in a direction where they realize that if they don't get involved, then the only way the big old guard can get involved is by buying out the new technology and try to migrate in that direction. But the new technology is a lot more nimble. And I think, from a political perspective, it's very similar that you look at all those countries. Every one of those countries is still influenced by the old guard, politically speaking. You haven't had much change, from politically. You always have the same people in power for the most part. It's just a recycling of the power. And
well,
so
Merkel,
it's just very similar type of.
Germany's Merkel, stepping down too. It's like, I don't know if that's a surprise, really, anybody. I kind of thought that was going to be, yeah, she resigned as party leader, right, but not as chancellor. That's right. But still, there's a pervasiveness in this happening. I'm also hearing, I got some winds of potentially Poland too, although I couldn't find anything in Poland because, I mean, I've been kind of following what's happening there pretty closely. So it's a little bit interesting to see what might happen. I couldn't find any resignations since August anyway, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. Buddy Boyo Radio says, thank you for that support. Appreciate that, buddy. He says, guys, I've invested a large portion of my savings in XRP at $1 after hearing YouTuber Moon Lambo guaranteeing XRP will blast $3 all-time high. Should I sell before it's too late? That's interesting. I've never heard Moon Lambo guarantee. I've never heard him actually guarantee stuff. So that's interesting. I've not ever heard that. But if you put a lot in at $1, that must mean that you did that some time ago, because it hasn't been $1 for, I want to say, at least 3 years, Jeff.
2018.
2018 would have been January of 2018 as it was coming back down, or maybe you got it on the way up to the 285. Or 385, I should say.
I mean, I think, you have to really, in cases like that, we're not here to give, investing financial advice and financial advice, but, you got to figure it out, and kind of do what you're comfortable with. In my opinion, every individual gets into the space, investing in the space, based on their comfort level. We all, kind of have an idea of the direction things are going in. But nobody can really, figure out, the position that you're in, and you kind of have to, unfortunately, you got to, work through that yourself. I've been, in the past invested in things and, held on too long. And when I should have gotten out and sold out too soon before when I shouldn't have sold out, and did things emotionally, so I think, everybody gets in and invests, again, based on the position that they're in and, your comfort level to risk,
That's
your
exactly
risk
right,
aversion, So
well, also too, if you got in $1, you put a significant amount in, you're looking at a 70 to 80% loss, and if you're okay with that, because you always have to weigh. Jeff's right. You have to weigh your own risk level. Jeff and I have always asserted, don't invest more money than you're willing to lose. Why? Because it's risk. We have a market that's 11 years old. And nobody knows about it. We're in the stream talking about it like it's been going on, 11 years, but half the people in the world, not even half, less than 0.5% of the people are really invested into cryptocurrencies, worldwide. We're over 7 billion people. It's a very small subset of people that we're invested in. But even Tesla went through rocky roads. You also saw what happened to, Apple. I can tell you my ups and downs with Apples over the years, sold too quick. There's a lot of different ways, but always look at what is most comfortable for you. Look after yourself, look after your family. If you're okay with cutting your losses, the flip side of that is if you hold and it goes to zero, then are you okay with that? Or are you okay cashing out with taking a 70 to 80% loss? That's what you have to weigh yourself. Or you just kind of hang in there. Look, is XRP going to go away? No. It's decentralized, right? Now, what happens on the Ripple side of it and comes out of this is one thing, but I don't see XRP going away, especially when you have something like Spark, how it's going to work with the Spark token, with Flare, the whole DeFi that's coming into play. That alone tells me that it has a different use case and it doesn't fit the whole thing, but always do what's right for yourself. You got to weigh your own risks. And, we're not here to give financial advice. This is an entertainment show. Jeff and I give our opinions, Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. Sometimes, we read comments we might not necessarily agree with, but that's what makes everything go around. But always a good safe bet is do not invest more than you're willing to lose. I don't know if you ever go for some reason, Jeff, I went into a store and I bought one of these scratch offs, and I never buy them, like one of these lottery tickets you scratch off. And I go, let me just spend $5 on that. And you might as well take the $5 and just light it on fire and I don't know, start a fire with it or something, because that's what usually happens. And then I get home and it was so coded. It was like if it had this symbol times that symbol, and if you do all this stuff, and we're like, let's throw it out. I'm like, wait, let me examine this thing. And I look and I'm like, it's $10. So I won $5. And I don't even know what happened to that damn ticket. It's almost like, was I okay with losing $5? Yeah. Was it dumb? Pretty much. So you got to be, if you're willing to lose $5 here, $10 there, that's what you're looking at.
And the more you invest, that's where you take, people lose, it's just part of it, and unfortunate, but it's what happened, especially if you're trading. I've had that experience.
Jose says, can we talk about XRP being considered a security back then and slowly moving to not being a security as a result of decentralization? Yeah, we've asserted on the show. I mean, that's kind of what I've said from all along, right? And other people have, JP Thero, or if I'm not even saying his name right, but the CEO of Uphold put out a tweet the same way. He's like, well, could something have been, at one point something and then it automatically change to something else? I think that's what's going to happen. I think you're spot on with that comment, Jeff. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you brought that up before, so it's interesting, to see Jose bringing that up. Is that you can make the argument that when they initially sold XRP, it was sold as a security, just like the SEC made the same argument that Ethereum in the beginning had sold ETH as a security. When it was was it gifted or whatever to the foundation, and then kind of expanded out. But then they said then it changed. So what's the difference here? The only difference, in my opinion, between XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the others is that there's a major player that's connected to it. That's the only difference. Ethereum isn't a major player. Ripple is a major player. Why are they a major player? Right. Because they're working with banks and they're taking on Swift. That's it. That's the only reason why they could be considered a major player. Because if they were just building in the space, like let's say their only project was Coil, you think the SEC would care about Coil? They'd say, but you're not a player. Not. Who cares? You're not doing anything. I mean, you're doing something, but you're not impacting anything, right? It's minor. It's small. But are you building and proving that micropayments are possible? Yes. Are you impacting anything on a level that the SEC is going to care about? Not so much. When the SEC, went after Kick or Kin, that was also a little bit different because and it's interesting that they specifically went after Kin, but Kin was a big player. Think about, they were a social media company that was launching a token, a digital asset. So immediately the spotlight's on them. They weren't some fintech company that's coming out of nowhere and building in the space and developing, and they're an established company. And they said, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to launch our own digital currency and we're going to release it. And it's going to start, we're going to start trading it, and you're going to get it and you can then exchange it and buy stuff with it, so it was an immediate spotlight. But that's why Ripple, same thing, real company, real world use case, taken on Swift, already has a major, target, with a laser pointer right at the target, by a lot of entities. And that's it. That's my opinion anyways. I don't see any other reason why they would single out XRP as a digital asset from any of the other digital assets, other than XRP wasn't mined, and it was all, they basically just minted it with a limited supply. It was centralized in the beginning. Now it's decentralized due to the percentage of nodes in distribution. So it's functioning in a decentralized framework. So that's the only reason why, to that point, Chip, they could argue in the beginning it might have been a security, but it changed. And once it changed, that's it. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah, and so, but I think that's the clarity that was missing from any type of a settlement. When Brad said, believe me, we wanted to settle, something like that was missing from a settlement. You had to get the clarity out of it. I want to say, so Jose Cardenas says, thanks for the opinion, guys. Love the work. Yeah, thanks. We really appreciate you guys too, because you asked some really good questions. I wanted to jump over to this, Jeff. Check this out.
Whoa.
So New Zealand regulator issues fresh warning. I'm like, wait a minute. Did Jay Clayton did he like take a little trip over to New Zealand? He's like whispering in the ear of the regulators over there. So the regulator
relocated. He has New Zealand citizenship now.
Right. So I mean, well, we've heard a lot about that too. Let's not get into that. But he says New Zealand's financial services regulator issued a fresh warning over digital currencies, urging would-be investors take care amid rallies in digital asset prices. New Zealand Financial Markets Authority, which is known as the FMA, singled out Bitcoin as highly volatile. Jeff, is this like a broken record? It's like a repeat. It's highly volatile. It's risky. It's warning individuals they may lose the full value of their investment. I mean, come on. This isn't people's first rodeo. I mean, you don't get involved in something that used to be, if it was as low as 3,000 not too long ago, went to 10, oscillated there, then shot right up to 35, 40, and then lost 25%. It went right to 30, touched it, and headed back up. I mean, if you're not paying attention, you might not know that it's a risky thing. But I'm like, it's so funny that everybody now is beaten up. Meanwhile, the SEC is going after Ripple. They've hammered XRP. And who's getting beat up? Number one, Bitcoin. They're getting throat punched, Jeff. It's like relentless. Everywhere we look, you cannot look in any one of these articles without somebody coming for Bitcoin.
That's it. And we're starting to see, some restrictions in the UK. Oh, Moda Yoda just said that. This happened in the UK too.
Jeff, I thought that was your thought right there.
Oh, it was. I was kind of in that direction, but
okay.
I saw his thing say the UK. I didn't read the whole thing, and then I was talking while I was reading. But they made some restrictions on trading crypto with options. But I think they went a step further because they made basically in the UK they were making it where you can't act. They're blocking banks. So like the HSBC won't allow you to move money back from a crypto exchange back to the bank. So one of the things that actually happened here recently with the OCC is this was a major push through the OCC. It'll be interesting to see, we're talking about this new administration and, can this new SEC guy be crypto friendly? But what happens with some of the rules that have been pushed through by the OCC that are going to allow in the US, not anywhere else, for the expansion and development within the space? So the one thing the OCC did different than what we're talking about in the UK is they made it that banks can't pick and choose industries. So you can't classify a specific industry as a non-starter, and so crypto would be one, the weapons industry two, and there's, multiple other industries that banks and credit card processors may try to stop processing with. And now the OCC said, nope, you can't do that. Over in the UK, they're starting that trend right now. But hey, you know what? If there's a credit card on one of those digital asset exchanges, and guess what? By the way, those credit cards are typically Visa or MasterCard. And so that means, they're the ones that are kind of involved in it because that's the only way you can use that credit card in a terminal when you go shopping somewhere. So now you're going to be able to, doesn't matter. So it is only HSBC declining crypto currency so far in the UK. There you go. So only HSBC. But hey, you know what? If you have an HSBC account and you really, really wanted to use your digital asset, then just spend it, with a credit card. Transfer it into a USDC or something like that. And now it's you got out of your volatility. It's a little more stable. I mean, I don't see what HSBC has to gain from it, Chip. I think they have everything to lose at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. And it comes back to the whole idea, like when you look at social media, you look at what happened over here in the States where you had, and look, it doesn't matter. It could have been, it could have been anybody. The point of it is that if somebody got banned off of Twitter because of an interpretation of what you think could happen, might happen, maybe someday happen, and then in that same tweet you argue you made the right choice, but you're really hoping that Bitcoin, that social becomes decentralized. Well, I'm sorry, but in decentralization world, you don't get the control. Okay, so it doesn't even matter. So the whole thing with the banks, and I think Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan said it best. We should be scared shitless of these fintechs, and he's right, because now they're starting to acquire fintechs. They're just waking up. A couple years ago, Jamie Dimon was like, well, I don't know about Bitcoin, but he's probably loading up his bags of Bitcoin. Point of it is, and they had their own, the JP coin, which they later sold off. But you start seeing that at some point, when you have some kind of a paradigm shift, it doesn't even matter what it was. Like with the internet, it was like, oh, I don't need the internet. I don't need to communicate to people online. I'll just call them, and I remember when I was visiting a friend right around 2000 in the Netherlands, and everyone's riding around on bikes, and it was like the flip phones, and everybody was like click, 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 click. And I'm like, what are you clicking all that stuff for? Oh, I'm sending it just a text. I'm like, well, can't you just call somebody? So, and then it wasn't too much longer than we're living on our phone all the time. And sometimes Jeff and I be like, dude, just call me because I can't take it anymore, or I send a message back and forth. But, we always take what we know. We kind of we live with that. We hang on to it because it's so precious. We can't think of something possibly new happening. And that's when you talk to people and you go like, hey, buddy, have you ever heard about, this thing called XRP? You ever heard of XLM? What about, Hedera Hashgraph? How about, if you heard about VET, if you heard about, right, you start talking to them and all of a sudden they look at like, uh-oh. They get that weird look in their eyes and they're like trying to figure out how to get away, like you trapped an animal in a corner. And meanwhile, you're trying to help and you're like, oh no, did I just say that? But it's becoming easier because now people are coming in and are going, tell me more about this Bitcoin. You must be loving life because Bitcoin's going through the roof. That's what everyone tells me. You know what I say? My neighbors, all that stuff. Yeah, I'm loving it.
That's right. Exactly.
Just loving it.
But here's something else, Chip. With all of this negativity out there, and it's interesting because the one thing that we're seeing is regardless of the news, pro, con, or whatever, when it comes to Ripple, when it comes to Bitcoin can be impacted a little bit, but we're seeing this separation of XRP. What is the one thing that people have said? Oh, look at all the great news with Ripple, over the course of the past year or so. Look, they're signing this contract, they're doing this, they did this with MoneyGram, they did all these things, but XRP hasn't budged. XRP is still 24 cents, 25 cents. Now think about XRP with all the negativity of an SEC lawsuit. And where is it sitting? At 29 cents. Where was it a month ago before the whole crypto space blew up? 29 cents, 24 cents, 25 cents. Then it blew up to 60 in that short period of time. Then they had the announcement. Then there was a bit of a pullback and it's sitting back at 29 cents right now. So what that's telling me is that it's achieving, low volatility, because the news of what's happening with one of the bigger players in the space, Ripple, isn't having a massive impact on it, that the community at large has agreed that the set price for XRP is 29 cents. What does that mean? Buyers, sellers. You have buyers, you have sellers, and you have just enough, in the market. You can go through whatever terminology you want to use, but they've all agreed that this is the price that they're buying and selling at. And that's it. It has nothing to do with Ripple at this point. It's amazing that it's 29 cents. And it's been 29 cents for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, but think about it well, I'm thinking maybe this SEC thing wasn't a bad thing. It's like, at least it's at 29, 30 cents. I remember when we were like going 17, 18, dipped down to 14, came back up at 20. It's like, wait a minute, how can this technically be doing better than it was just a couple months ago when it was hovering, it was right in that 19, 20, 21 range. Yeah, then it got up to 24, 25, right? We talked a little bit about John Deaton. I wanted to throw this up there because it's something he's talked about before, but I do think it's worth repeating, which is the SEC was reportedly warned that investors may lose billions due to enforcement action against Ripple legal expert claims. And who is that legal expert? None other than our pal, John E. Deaton. He's obviously focused on the cryptocurrency sector and other societal issues. But he put out this tweet. He said, the SEC warned investors would lose billions. Considering the magnitude of an SEC enforcement action against the third largest digital asset, XRP, the SEC and its chairman, Jay Clayton, were sent a letter prior to the filing action from former Chief Joseph Grunfest. And Joseph Grunfest, I believe, was appointed by the Reagan administration, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken. And, he ran the SEC for 3 or 4 years, and basically he was kind of like doing a friendly thing. If, especially if you've been around the block a few times, you say like, hey, buddy, look, I've been through this, but you're not maybe considering all parts of it. Now, Joseph Grunfest, having somebody, it's in his past, but what he's pointing out to Jay Clayton is the fact that your chief responsibility is to look out after the investors, right? And you're going full gung-ho trying to take down, the company Ripple. I mean, that's the way it kind of looks, and we talked a little bit about this last night, but I don't know. I thought that was worth mentioning because, it wasn't like they operated inside a bubble. It wasn't like they had dissension, because Hester Pierce has always been pro crypto, right? She came out with that, the safe harbor where you have up to 3 years to figure out how to turn a coin and turn it into decentralized sort of an asset or have some kind of use case.
Yep. Hey, I just want to give a quick shout out to Blockchain Backer.
Whoa,
what is going on, Blockchain Backer? Good to see you here. We owe Blockchain Backer a bit of gratitude. He gave us a little bit of a shout out before, and helped.
Wait a minute, a little gratitude, Jeff. He deserves a giant shout out, man. So when you look at
giant shout out,
when you look to someone you respect out there, and all of a sudden does a tweet and sends people your way in a video, man, it's like, man, completely amazed by it, really appreciate it, and deep gratitude, man. So thank you, Blockchain Backer. And it was so crazy at one time, we had to put this out. We had to throw that up there. Thank you, Blockchain Backers, because man, they were coming in droves saying, hey, Blockchain Backer sent us, or BCB as I. So yeah, very cool, man. I appreciate you popping in here and seeing what's up.
Hey, I wanted to grab this one also. So this is David Soto. Do cryptos split like stocks? So I think that's an interesting question. What's great is that we have a lot of new people that are coming into the digital asset space, that are tuning in and trying to, sort through all of the different YouTube channels and trying to figure out what's good, what's not so good, what's educational, what's not so educational. And, I love it. People put in questions like that as you're trying to learn, figure things out. So the short answer is no. Digital assets don't split like stocks, because they're, think about it more like, if you were to try to equate it to anything, think about it like a currency. That would be the easiest way to think about it, that changes in value. If you think about, the foreign exchange, or, if you're trading the FX, different currencies, different values. That's the easiest way to think about it. But when it gets a little bit more detailed, then you don't necessarily split, but they do fork. So if you think about Bitcoin did fork into BCH and some others that forked off of the original Bitcoin blockchain. Why? Because you had a group of people that wanted to do things a little bit differently, and they wanted to change things a little bit in their own way, and then they end up forking it. And you've seen that in multiple different assets, and that's probably the easiest, most simplistic way to explain it. What do you think, Chip?
Well, when you say forking it, it sounds almost like we're cursing, and we're not. It just sounds that way.
Like a fork in the road.
Yeah, like a fork in the road. Yeah. Well, sometimes that's always against a little bit of resistance as well. And you also had, the reason we talk so much about XRP, XLM. Jeb McCaleb, when he was one of the original founders of, along with, the other founders, when he was looking at there was a disagreement about how they wanted to pursue it, right? With this camp over here said, no, XRP is going to be used for this. It looked like, and we don't know, we're just guessing, that he was more focused on retail. And so that's kind of a different thing where he kind of said, okay, well, let me go over here and start the Stellar Foundation and, launch the Stellar Lumens and, launch that puppy, what we know as XLM, and he created a foundation and boom, they were off and running. But then they did things like, well, let's burn 50 billion of the supply. So they're only at 50 billion. And that's always the same. Hey, Lady E, show some love, she says. I like that a lot too. Saw somebody else in here too that I wanted to get to. Here it is. XRP Hollywood. Hey, how amazing would it be if XRP price moons after XRP trading stops in the US? It may even further cement Ripple's case that XRP is not a security, as the increase would happen overseas. Well, one of the things that I talk about that I've mentioned in the complaint, because we went through it ad nauseum here, I drilled down on it every single day on a full week. And one of the things I noticed about it was the way they were talking about the fact that Ripple would give it to companies, and then companies would spend it immediately. They were complaining they didn't have a lockup period. Well, yeah, because it has a value, and what they're mad about is because it demonstrated the property of a digital asset where it had a value and could instantly be transferred into a fiat currency of whatever kind. This happened with MoneyGram. They said, well, as soon as the entity got it, whether they bought it at a 4 or 30% discount, turns out that they sold it immediately. And I'm like, that kind of proves the case that there is a value to it in the sense that it's a digital currency. And this goes back to the two regulations bodies in the UK, where they both kind of came to the same conclusion, but the one said, yeah, it kind of exercises two prongs. It's a digital asset, but it also has a use case. So it's interesting, Jeff.
That's all interesting stuff.
I want to say this to David Maturu. Thank you for that. Send a super sticker of a van. No, that's not the super sticker. That's just
that's sweet. Check out that cool super sticker.
Yeah, it's like one of those van lights where you like.
That's probably David's van, right? That's his.
Yeah, man, living a van down by the river. It's all possible.
Very cool. Sweet. Check out Sir John over here. Sir John, what is going on? It's great. We got our a lot of people here that have been with us for a long time, like Kelly Slade and Sir John, and then we've got Lady Ian here, I Kinda Pawn, Simon Bickerton, and who else did I see pop in here a little while ago? Obviously, Darcy's been in here for a little bit. Legendary 179
Crusaders fan.
Yeah, all sorts of great.
A whole bunch of people.
Of our old timers, our old time crew.
So
here. Sir John says, if majority of validators vote for the amendment, change in code is made, new coins can be minted or old burnt, so it could work as a stock split. I guess that was going back to the Bitcoin thing.
Well, I mean, one of the things is I like when when David made that very clear. He said that, yeah, I mean, whether they wanted to vote for it or not, I think was it 80% they needed consensus in the validators, I think, to pass an amendment where they have to vote yes, but they could burn the supply. And I think that, and it was interesting hearing John Deaton last night talk about what might happen out of this particular complaint against the SEC, against Ripple. This whole supply that they have, right? So if it's decentralized, how do they have it locked up, and how are they releasing, a billion that they're releasing in a certain period of time? So that might be another condition thing where they may say, okay, got it, it's decentralized. Yes, it exercised properties of a digital asset with some type of a use case. But wait a minute, you guys have this stuff locked up. So that's going to be interesting, Jeff. And I don't know how you feel about that.
About locking it up?
Well, the fact they locked it up. It's, in other words, is it truly decentralized if it's sitting locked up under their control? Under the control of Ripple. See what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, it's put into an escrow, so they don't really have control
it is an escrow, right? And the escrow has very specific
control over it, and the validators, like you're saying, they can burn it, so they have some control over changing the rules.
No, I get that, but I'm saying I'm looking at more from the side of what the SEC might come in and say. Well, you're controlling it. That's what I'm saying. I obviously they. An escrow, the thing about escrow is you don't have any control. That's why when you have two parties that come together, you have a third party escrow, because it's not like, hey, don't worry, I'll hold your money until we get the deal done. No, I'll hold your money. That's why you have an escrow, because third party, it's no risk counterparty, so it makes a lot of sense.
In that case, you probably need Flare.
I think we need Flare. That's what we need. Like, light it up, Jeff. Get the blowtorch going.
Need some Flare over there. But I just want to give this just a mention. I think the news story of the dude that kind of lost 277 million in Bitcoin is as common as Corona news. It's interesting. That was Stefan Thomas, ex-CTO of Ripple, actually lost his password, unfortunately.
But he's right about that, because.
Yeah. Check that out. We got 179 Kevin. Appreciate that. 589. Check that out. All is well here. Appreciate that.
And we got another one too here. This is Buddy Boyo Radio. Another 5. He says, I'm comforted by the fact that most dark web drug weapons and porn vendors will accept XRP along with BTC and Monero. Okay. Listen, Buddy Boyo, whatever works for you, man. I mean, if that's what they're accepting, but once the minute that those two entities, let's not go crazy, but those two entities say, you know what, dude, we're shutting down XRP. You want to know why? The whole thing with the SEC. So I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen, because it is dark web, but it's always been BTC, and I'm just waiting for that to come out next. Now they're beating up on Bitcoin enough, and they'll be like, well, the dark web, and you heard about finally came to a settlement with Mt. Gox. Did you see that, Jeff? There's like they're gonna do a settlement on that.
There's another one here. Digital asset dead. That's cool. XRP and XLM have powerful partnerships. What other digital assets have legit partnerships? I think that to me is an extremely valid point. I mean, it's, think about all of the different organizations that are, in Japan, even SBI working with ODL, working with XRP, the digital asset. Think about, what XLM does represent in terms of where it is being utilized, or at least they're trialing it. Doesn't mean it's in, retail use, but at least it's going through the trials, and the fact that they're using the Stellar Foundation code over in the Ukraine, for building out their CBDC. Significant, not so much for XLM, but yes, there's very few others that actually have that type of full orchestration. There was another comment here I wanted to bring up real quick, and I think there's a few others you wanted to grab.
Before you get in there, I just want to say one thing about that I think what pioneered the path and everything was with XRP and partnerships, and kind of like brought that into kind of like to the forefront. I do see that there are some other legitimate products out there now, whether you like VeChain or not. They've done some partnerships with like BMW and Walmart Asia, and Hedera Hashgraph has some more with municipalities. So we're starting to see it become more and more prevalent, but nothing even comes close to what Ripple has done with the players that are name brands. You're like, well, they did a partnership with that. Like, I don't know what that is. So that's all I wanted to say on it. Jeff, go ahead and handle this question.
So DNI, I thought I was mentioning the IMF, but we weren't. But DNI, showed up anyways with a perfect response here. So he says Ripple doesn't really have control of the escrow. They cannot change the smart contracts, according to David, which, right, it has to be voted on by the validators if they want to adjust it. And then they're obligated also to put whatever is unused back in the escrow. That's all part of the rule of their management of the escrow. Ripple, the company, is centralized, which is standard. Most companies are relatively centralized. XRP, a digital asset separate from the company Ripple, is not centralized and is decentralized. So I think that's is a great point made by DNI.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good one. But I was saying, like, from the standpoint of the SEC, they're alleging all this stuff. Wow, you have this and you have these things. Would they look at it like that? But no, I don't think so. I don't think it's going to come down to that. I do want to say, if it's your first time here, like, subscribe, click that thumbs up. And we do have another channel. We post short form videos, they're very different from the live ones where we have all this interaction. We just cranked up finally our podcast. So Jeff, I don't know if you want to grab the URL on that thing, but pop it in the stream there. It's always,
I have it up.
I have it here.
I can't grab that.
Here, I'll grab it real quick and throw it into the stream. But guys, this is like, if you, like, for example, you might miss one of our live streams, you might not make it or whatever in time. This is what this is right here. So you can go to your favorite, if you click this little subscribe button right here, if you go to that URL I just dropped in there, click on subscribe, you can go to Apple Podcasts. And I noticed that 70% of our audience watches it on Apple. And you want to know what the second most famous one is?
Spotify.
No, Spotify doesn't even make it, Jeff. It's Google Podcasts. So, you can see it's probably split between, devices. If you're on Apple, you're probably listening to Apple. If you're on, if you're on a Android, you're probably going to listen to that. But I was shocked because I love Spotify and it wasn't even on the list. And right, I love Spotify, man. It's like especially love listening to podcasts. And then Jeff, let's talk a little bit about our virtual blockchain meetup. We love you guys coming in here. We wanted to put something together, so we are sponsoring a virtual meetup. It's coming up on the 31st. Jeff, want to talk a little bit about this and why we're doing it?
Why are we doing it, Chip?
For the hell of it, I think, Jeff, because we want to meet our community, the people that come in here and make this a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Jeff.
So January 31st, which is a Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to host this virtual meetup. It's going to be awesome. We bought the software to make it happen, so we are sponsoring this event, which is great. We think it's going to be awesome, and it's so unique and different that allows everyone to come in. We're kind of maxed out at 500 people, but we'll see. Might be a little less than that. We have a guest coming in that's going to be there with us as well, which is Crypto Eddie. Many of you guys know her. And we are going to have some representatives from Bitra there, I believe.
Could we get Blockchain Backer if he's still on? I'd love to have him.
Blockchain Backer, wants to show up for the meetup, that'll be awesome. The goal, though, isn't so much for us all to sit and watch different speakers come on, because that's going to be a different event that we're going to put on in more of a conference-like setting. This is going to be really, focused on the meetup aspect with some talking. But what's nice is that everyone gets to congregate on these digital tables, so to speak, and we can have like 6 to 8 people per table. So it's going to be a small group. You get to hang out, you get to talk, you can use video, audio only, whatever. But it's a great way for the community to engage in an actual meetup-like environment. So we're actually, Michael, we're going to be sending out a registration. We're fine-tuning all that. We're going to get that out, and we'll start dropping that in our videos and the descriptions. Hopefully it will be out by tomorrow. We'll get that going. And so people start registering. And then once you get registered, then so you definitely want to RSVP for it. So as soon as you see it, then you guys would definitely want to jump on it. Someone was saying that we missed some super chats, and I'm trying to figure it out here.
Let me see.
Just going back up to the list here.
Try to keep an eye on that. Let's see. We got Digital Dad here.
Let's see.
Double check.
179. Buddy Boy. Maybe the comment came. You got David. I think we got him.
I think we did. If we missed it, guys, we're terribly sorry about that. Sometimes we get bloviating and we miss stuff. And unfortunately, the chat software here only allows us to go so far back. So
yeah. Sorry, Chip. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I usually try to keep an eye on it because I have the YouTube one up that's actually less delay and it actually catches my eye, so I try to find it here. But this one is it's kind of wonky. It doesn't allow us to kind of go back and forth. But
yeah, there was actually a question here from Michael Dobson. I thought was kind of important. We kind of wrap things up here. But it says, question: can you speak on Bitra's address change and if our XRP is safe to self-custody on the Nano Ledger X? And I think that's, I know many people are using the Nano, the original one or the X. You're self-custodying. The Nano X is basically just a key, a hardware key to your assets. And I think there's a level of risk with everything. If you put it on one of the bigger exchanges like an Uphold or a Coinbase, I think there's some level of comfort there that you don't have to, if you lose something, you can still access the ledger. You're self-custodying, so you have a little more control over what happens. The only risk is if you lose it, you can always buy another one, but don't lose your seed words. So the seed words are more important than the thumb drive itself. The seed words that you have to write down and store them in a very, very safe place and duplicate them. Yeah, he lost his code, so that's always a bit of a concern. But hey, I just want to say I appreciate everybody that's on here. You guys are awesome. This was a great conversation tonight. I'm looking forward to tomorrow nights.
Yeah, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Chip and Jeff out.
We're out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.